Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hello, friends.
Hello.
If you're listening to the podcast, you're like, whoa.
There's so many hellos.
So many hellos. As always, I am joined by my spectacular co-host, Kate Sitars. Hello, Kate.
Hello. I was about to say thank you because thank you. Spectacular. Yeah.
No thanks needed. It's the truth. And I'm also joined by three other spectacular colleagues and CCA students and copywriters, Cleo, Nicole, and Dorothy. Hello, ladies.
Wow.
Hello. Hello. So yes, we have a panel discussion today that I'm really excited to dig into. And kudos to Cleo for suggesting this topic and for all of the ladies for being willing to discuss this. But what we're going to dig into today is what it's like to make a career transition while you're also in the middle of making a major life transition, and also specifically what it's like to be freelancing in the middle of a major life transition. And the major life transition we're digging into today is separating, breaking up, divorce, basically.
Real lighthearted. Real
lighthearted.
Yeah. Should be easy breezy today.
Yeah. Fun, lots of laughs. But the making a transition in your personal life from a path that you thought that you were on, and everybody who's listening has experienced this, right? You think, all right, this is it. I'm good to go. This is where we're headed. And all of a sudden, screech, that's not where you're headed anymore. And often
life has other plans.
Better
plans.
I was just about to say, in hindsight, often, if not almost flipping always, we can look back and go, oh my goodness, thank goodness that ended. Thank goodness I moved on. But it's a lot to go through in the moment. And we wanted to dig into this topic because it is a lot to go through. And we wanted to give people some insight as to what it's like to go through while you were also building a business, while you were freelancing, and how that factors into that life transition as well. So, I'm actually... I'm not even entirely sure quite the best way to start. Does anybody...
let's start with the thank. I know you said this before we started recording, but I feel like it bears repeating. Thank you. And I thank all the listeners on behalf of the listeners that you already know you're going to help for being willing to discuss this, because it's, especially like you're putting your faces, like you're here, you're showing up, you're talking about a really hard thing. So thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of paying it forward personally. I mean, I've gained so much from being, in the CCA community and learning so much from all of the very, very supportive people there, and then in CCA Next Level, and all of the things that people have done for me to just remind me who I am deep down underneath all of the craziness. I want to pay that forward to other people because I know somebody else out there is in a situation that's difficult and they're not sure what the other side is going to look like, and it's scary. And so anything I can do to just pass on what I've learned and, hopefully make some decisions a little bit easier and less scary, I'm happy to take part.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Well, maybe if you guys are amenable to it, we can kind of give a high level for each of you. Tell us all of the details about the breakup. Give us his name so we can look him up. No, but as many details as you're comfortable with. But in terms of the transition, and then also what was going on in your business at the time, in your career at the time.
I can start. Yeah, let's see, to summarize the story. So I started my business in the pandemic, was a pandemic business, and I also had a pandemic baby in June 2020. So I was launching both those at the same time. I was with my partner at that time. So really obviously talking about huge life transitions and big changes all happening at once. And unfortunately, there was lots of stuff going on and the marriage just didn't survive all those changes. We separated when my daughter was 2, which was about 2 years ago now, which was very, very shocking to me. Though looking back, I do think that part of it was just all the change that was going on in my life and in my ex-partner's life. And all the stuff that we were doing. So I was fully supporting the family before the split, which I know puts me in sometimes a different financial situation than people where that's not the case. So I was already fully supporting all three of us, and now fully supporting me and my daughter with the copywriting income. There were some tough times through that divorce of just being able to get worked on and like sit down and have that focus. But as I'm sure we're going to talk about later, coming out on the other side, it has been amazing. And it's just given me so much freedom to really build the life that I want and the business that I want, the schedule I want, the lifestyle I want, like all of that stuff. And I think that especially if you have kids and especially young kids, the freelancing makes it so much easier to be a single parent. I think there can be a lot of stress about like having all the financial needs on your shoulders as a single parent. Depending on everyone's financial situation is different if your partner is paying bill. I don't know. But I found that it's been totally, totally worth it. You can absolutely keep the income steady while also giving yourself so much more flexibility to handle all the craziness you have to handle as a single parent of a young child.
That's really cool to hear. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised to hear that you feel it's kind of better to be a freelancer and find yourself a single parent. That's really interesting.
Absolutely. I cannot imagine there have been so many times in this journey where I've been like, if I had a job, like what would my kid was sick and home all week. Like I literally don't understand what I would have done. Like what do you do?
Yeah. Nicole, what has been your story?
Oh my goodness. I'm trying to find the right balance in my brain of like not oversharing, but also like I want to give you all the details because if people are going through something similar. Well, in short, so I also, like Cleo, my business was pretty well established by the time I was going through the breakup. I think I started CCA in 2019 and like was already like that was my full-time income. But the relationship I was in that ended this was November 2022 and we're recording this in April 2024. But there was addiction that we were dealing with on my partner's side. So in a way that almost made having my own business harder because if anyone listening is also dealing with, someone in your family or someone you love who has addiction, it causes a lot of unpredictability. So, something very unstable would happen and then I'd have to go to a meeting and it was very hard. So my partner and I were not married, so there was no divorce, but there was a house involved. So the whole transition was quite hard, like the breaking up and the paperwork and the figuring out where I was going to live. But on the other side, like similar to what Cleo said, it is so much easier running my business and being able to give it like the focus that I really want to give it to grow. The amount of growth I've had since the recovery of that breakup has been pretty exponential. It's been amazing. Yeah. So yeah, that's my nutshell. Trying to keep it light. Yeah. I'm in a great place right now.
That's good. That's the important thing, right?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And Dorothy, what is your nutshell story?
My nutshell story. So I think I might have been in the longest relationship of the three of us. I was married for 21 years before the separation, which was, we separated a year ago this month. And about a month ago, as of this recording, is when we finalized the divorce. So I'm officially divorced. It was a lot of time in limbo with a high conflict personality, dragging things out and making things more difficult than they had to be to get to the end of that. But yeah, the relationship was pretty toxic. Not to get into all the details right off the bat, but there was a lot of stuff that affected my health pretty significantly. This is, I think, my third appearance on this podcast. If anybody here has listened to the first one I was on talking about building a copywriting business with a chronic illness. So I had this stuff that affects my nervous system. And I thought it was just a random thing that happened to affect me. I had no idea how much my relationship was affecting that as well. So it was just getting worse and worse. And yeah, so ultimately it was my health not being able to withstand things that I was like, I have to get out of this situation and figure out what's next. So having the freelance business really allowed me to do that. I started my freelance business in 2019. And 2023, we separated. And at the time, my income was not where I needed it to be to support me and my kids. And I was a little freaked out. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to have to figure it out because I can't stay in this situation. But we can come back to details. It went well, reader. It went well.
Reader, I divorced him.
And I made lots of money.
Yeah.
On my own, I should say, not from the divorce.
Yeah. Right. No, I didn't fleece anybody. I didn't ruin anybody else financially to get to an okay place myself, just to be clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Cleo, you had mentioned, just kind of alluding to maybe the getting work done while going through all of this. And I think for all of you, I'm just curious to me, and as Dorothy, especially with the energy level of like how much energy you have to give in a day it's finite for all of us, but particularly if you have a chronic illness. And so how do you work through? Because I feel like you're dealing with emotions, which can be unpredictable depending on the day. You might wake up one day and be like, I can't, but I have this work to do. So how do you find that balance of like, okay, I've got to get work done, but here's all of this weight of personal life that is weighing me down and I also have to deal with?
I think that it was really a learning experience. And this is another reason where I'm glad that I had experience as a freelancer before, because there had been cycles of just like other stuff going on. Nothing as serious as like a divorce with a 2-year-old, but other stuff going on. So I was sort of familiar with how I needed to take care of myself. But it definitely really pushed me to do that well. And you guys have mentioned like just the amount of personal growth and like absolute transformation. I mean, I'm unrecognizable as a human being to the person I was before. And I think that was a big part of it, is I just really had to start taking self-care so much more seriously than I had been. Really had to accept like limits, like those sort of like emotional limits in a way I hadn't. Had to become okay with like, sometimes in the middle of the afternoon, what I need to do is take a nap, like and not feel guilty about it and like beat myself up about like, that's what I need to do to be able to like get through this day. And after your work shift finishes, there's the parenting shift too. And there's, emotions on that end to manage too. So it was really, I think, a lesson in that self-care and taking that seriously in a way I hadn't really before.
Mm-hmm.
I think what Cleo said about taking naps was really important. But there's one thing that like as a freelancer, the amount of pitching I do today doesn't affect me tomorrow. It affects me in 2 or 3 months, especially with like if clients pay me after projects. So I remember in like December, right? I was living in my sister's basement trying to figure out next steps. And I kept thinking like, I don't have enough energy to like pitch. And I know I'm going to feel this in March. I know I'm going to feel it in March, but I still couldn't push myself over that. And I did feel it in March. Like by the time the spring rolled around of 2023, I was in a like pretty like a business that had been well established. I was like, oh no, I don't have any income. Luckily, you can turn that dial again. Like you can turn it back up, but I don't know if I have a solution for that. Like, I don't think in the moment I could have like drummed up the energy. I was very aware of the fact that it would affect me down the road. So sorry, I don't have an answer.
No,
I don't know what I could have done differently, to be honest.
Sometimes it's just surviving. I feel like it's just,
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could give one tip for that, it's leave yourself white space. Because having a big life transition happening is going to drain you. And you don't know how much and you don't know when. And there's going to be ups and downs and you're going to be coasting for weeks, maybe months. Everything seems like it's going great. You are full of energy. You're getting all kinds of cool things done. And then something will rear its ugly head that has to be dealt with and you have to drop everything else. So just leave yourself white space because you're going to need it. That's my big tip in that area. For me personally, that's one of the big things I was very, very worried about is how am I going to have the energy physically, emotionally, cognitively to deal with the separation, the divorce, building up my business income because it wasn't nearly where it needed to be going forward, right? Long term. How am I going to manage all these very large things at the same time? Given that my nervous system has an overactive stress response and will shut things down if I have too much on my plate, right? Like that's the thing I've been managing for several years. So that was the thing that I was very worried about. But what I was pleasantly surprised to find was that when you get out of a situation that has been subjecting you to chronic emotional and psychological stress for a long period, you get out of that situation, suddenly you're going to find yourself with a lot more energy because your energy isn't going into trying to figure out what the heck is happening and what you can do about it. Your energy now is redirected to more constructive things. So your body has the space to heal. Your brain can start recovering. Like anybody listening, if you're in a very stressful situation and you can't figure out why you can't figure out what to do about it, there is research that kind of ongoing chronic stress does physical brain damage. Like your amygdala gets bigger, your hippocampus gets smaller, and it's not going to recover until you're out of that damaging situation, right? So that's possible. If your brain just isn't working the way it's supposed to, and you're in a very stressful long-term situation, that might be contributing to your cognitive state. So just know that if you're in a situation like that and you get some space away from it, things are going to get clearer. You're going to be able to think better and make decisions that you're confident about. You'll be able to assess things more clearly. You're going to get better once you get into a better situation. So if you have, health things like I do, or nervous system things, or if you have a lot of anxiety or anything like that, just know that if you're in a bad relationship right now, even if it's just not a good fit, getting out of all that stress, you'll be in a better situation to make intentional decisions about your life. So just know that that's one of the outcomes of ending a relationship that isn't working. Your brain will work better. Short version.
I think that the processing emotions thing is definitely something that comes up for me, because I will tell you that there have been times when I have sat at my desk and sobbed and thought, how on earth would I have done this if I were in an office, right? And I can take an hour.
Sobbed in an office. It's fine. So if you're in an office, know that I've done it before. And if you do it, it's fine.
Yes, true. That's a great point. No judgment. No judgment at all.
Sob in an office.
But it's a little freer to sob at home.
100%.
Yes.
100%.
And it's, I have suspected that in the past for me, just letting myself go, all right, it's 2:00 in the afternoon and I can't stop it. So I'm just going to put a pause on the work I was doing and spend time feeling that emotion.
Yeah.
I have suspected that has helped me. Not that getting over things quickly is the goal by any means, but maybe just being able to recognize and process the emotions. I think that's helped me do it a little bit better. Have you guys found anything similar for you? Not that you have to confess to crying at your desk. Also, not that there's anything wrong with it.
Confessing.
I would never.
Yeah, we just gotta stuff those emotions down, right? Like that's the way to do all of this, right? Like that's
Yeah. No, I mean, the self-awareness piece is really big. If you have any kind of mindfulness practice, that's very, very helpful to kind of reintegrate your mind and your body. In my case, I'll just speak for myself. I had some experience with yoga, which I've been doing for years, and that sort of fell off my plate when my health declined. I had a hard time keeping that practice going. And then I found that eventually I had dissociating might be too strong a word, but I definitely was ignoring and suppressing what I was feeling. I was pretty disconnected from the actual state of my well-being for a long time. So once I was able to kind of reassess and get reconnected and start practicing more meditation again and more restorative yoga and just feeling what I feel and thinking what I think and being clear on what those all are, right? That started to make a big difference because I hadn't been listening to me. There were all kinds of things where like my body was trying to tell me, you need to not do this. This is not okay. And I just ignored it. I was like, no, we'll make it work. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out. We didn't figure it out. So yeah, being able to connect those pieces of yourself, that's really important.
And I totally agree with what Dorothy said earlier about how it got easier once the relationship was over, like just the amount of energy that you put into, a bad relationship. For me, I feel like the hard part where it was hard to work and hard to focus and all of that, that was before the separation. In those few months, trying to make it work, trying to save the marriage, fighting nonstop. Like that was the part where I was not functional. Once we actually separated, things started getting so much better, so much more quickly. And I say that as well. In my situation, I have like 90% custody of my daughter, who's a toddler. So I think a lot of people going into that would be like, oh my gosh, like I'm not going to have any time. I'm going to have this like little kid around, I have more time. It's
Yeah.
easier to take care of a toddler when you're not also dealing with a really stressful relationship. Like,
Yeah.
I have more time for my business and more focus and energy. I'm like, there's so much less crying at my desk.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. For me, I started having that focus back before the actual separation. It was when I decided, oh, this is over.
Yeah.
I'm no longer pouring my energy into trying to fix this because it's not going to be fixed. Once I decided, okay, what I need to be putting my energy into is putting together my exit strategy. Those decisions were made. Then all of a sudden I could say yes to more work, and I had energy for pitching. And so it didn't even, for me, in my case, didn't even have to wait for the actual separation. It was, all right, now I know what I'm going to do.
When I was going through my breakup, I got coffee with Dorothy, and that helped me a lot.
Ooh, new podcast, Coffee with Dorothy.
Yeah.
Coffee with Dorothy.
That was a fun coffee. And I remember, Nicole, I talked a little bit about how stressful my life was at that point. And I was like, but it's fine. I hadn't reached that point yet. I wasn't at the point where I saw everything for what it was. I was like, something's not right. And I don't really understand it, but it is what it is for now. It was a few months after that I was like, oh, this is what's been going
You
on.
were that dog meme with the house that's on fire, and you're like, everything's fine.
Oh, absolutely. Just sitting there with my little cup of tea.
Yeah.
This was fine.
Yep.
Yeah, that was me when Nicole and I grabbed coffee.
I love it.
I was just thinking, I think I actually joined the next level right around the time we separated. I was just thinking of that, but that was exactly when that happened, because it was that same thing where like all of a sudden I was feeling like I had more energy and like I wanted to do stuff. And I think there is a little bit, we haven't said this yet, but there's a little bit of throwing yourself into work as a distraction.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
It was
Yeah.
definitely
of
going on
course.
for me. So I think that, yeah, like I joined Next Level. It changed a lot in my business. I hired a VA like a couple months after the separation. Like so much changed so quickly because of that energy, and because it was also like a little bit like something that I could control and something that was still mine.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of another thing I was gonna say about, ways to make sure that you're supported and taking care of yourself during a big transition like this is your network. It's your community. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Do you have friends who you can just talk to them about anything and they're not going to judge you, and they're not going to say, well, why haven't you left already? And what are you doing? And right. Do you have people who you can just like text and be like, I'm freaking out right now. What do I do about this? And they're going to like talk you down if need be. Right. But also professionally, right? Because you have to be earning an income to support the life that you're transitioning into. So I have my friend groups that I can text whenever, which is really important. But also, honestly, CCA Next Level was a big part of keeping my head in the game. So even when I had months where my income wasn't where I wanted it to be, my income wasn't showing that I was the professional that I needed to be going forward. But your income is not who you are. So this entire time when I didn't have the energy to be taken in the business that I wanted to be, I still was surrounded with people who saw me for who I am as a professional and kept my head in the right space as far as what's possible, what's reasonable, what's practical, thinking about goals in a smart way, keeping me from getting too distracted. I don't know how many times people have had to tell me, Dorothy, you cannot steer a parked car. So just being surrounded by people who are in that space of always looking forward, but not in a way that's pie in the sky. It's a group that's very grounded and very kind and honest with each other. So having that space where my personal life, I felt like was blowing up out of control and I didn't know where everything was going to land, but I still had this professional space where I knew who I was seen as who I was, and that was who I was going to come back to when everything else on the other side of my life settled down. So free plug for CCA Next Level. If anybody's, thinking about, is this right for me? It's not just about the trainings that you get. It's not just about the network. It's also like who you surround yourself with has a huge impact on what you think is possible and what you see for yourself going forward. So for me, that was really helpful.
Her new tagline: going through a breakup, join CCA Next Level.
There you go.
I know. We'll put in
Sorted.
a how to divorce your spouse
CCA
course
Next Level,
within.
yeah. Oh my goodness. You got to add levity, right?
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. And I agree. I've seen that myself, and I've seen that for so many people and colleagues and students, and just that the people around you the right people around you will help you stay true to yourself no matter what's going on. And unfortunately, sometimes the people around us, maybe they love us, but they don't know how to not even hold us to something higher, but know that we're going to get back to something higher. And I think that when you're in a group of similar professionals, there is that element of like, well, yeah, but we know that you're capable of more. Sure, you're going through stuff. Absolutely. But we know you're capable of more. We know you'll get back to it. Whereas sometimes the people who are our friends or your parents or sisters, brothers, that kind of thing, it's almost like they don't understand always what we're capable of. And sometimes that comes with a lot of history, if parents, siblings, that kind of thing. And I realize I'm starting to ramble, but I agree, I guess is what I'm saying, with that power of when you talk about what you want to do and where you want to go, there's no like, ooh, are you sure you can do that? It's only like, ooh, great idea. But have you also thought about this? And ooh, you should take a look at this. And ooh, you should do this. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're in a relationship that needs to end. If you're spending a lot of time with a partner who needs to no longer be your partner, but still for now is, like, you might be getting a lot of negative feedback from that person who does not understand your situation and does not have your best interests at heart, right? They might be portraying back to you a very different image of your prospects than what the reality is, right? Because they don't know. They really don't know. So yeah, 100%. Very important to surround yourself with the right people who are going to be part of the life you're building going forward, not just the life that you are coming out of.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the con too. Oh, Cleo, go ahead. No.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You go first, Cleo. You go.
No, I'm just going to say it's not only like your professionals and your team, but also being able as a freelancer to know that you're working with clients that you actually enjoy working with, instead of going to an office and being surrounded by people who are maybe adding to the drama or tension in your life in some cases.
Yeah, that's so important. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember like getting on the phone with a client during my breakup, and like, even when you're going through something like personally that's traumatic and turbulent, and you still try to show up to all your professional meetings like, everything's fine. I am professional. You can trust me, you know, with that attitude. And I was on this one phone call with a new client, a Zoom, so we're talking, and I forget how it happened, but somehow she asked where I was or something. And I was like, oh, my sister's basement, or, oh, an Airbnb, because I was in Airbnb at one point. And so suddenly I was like telling her not all the details of my story, but like ended up like slipping that, oh, I'm going through this thing. And then I apologized afterwards. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have. And she looked at me and she was like, I wouldn't want to work with someone that wasn't human. Like, of course you're going through like, and then she like sent me an email afterwards with like a bunch of shows that she recommended that I watched to help me like get through it. She recommended Ted Lasso and which I hadn't seen yet. I have now. I've seen it now by her recommendation. But yeah, I remember, I think after that call, I cried because I was just like, oh, right. I'm so grateful that I get to choose my clients so often. And like, she was just such a perfect example of like, oh, I want to work with people who can understand that I'm human and I want to give them the same, and you can be flexible about things and understand we're going through life transitions. And anyway, it was really lovely.
I would love that. Well, and I think there's something kind of, no matter who ended it or how it ended or anything like that, there's something kind of buoying. That's been my word lately, buoying to the spirit, or maybe validating. Not that we need to be external validation, but like sometimes you kind of do. And
we're human again.
Yeah, and it can be helpful while you're going through something rough to do work and have a client go, oh my God, this is awesome. So that no matter what you've been feeling and what any turbulent emotion.
Some wins. We all need some wins, even if they're little wins. Like,
exactly.
Thinking about wins, do you all have little wins that you tried to celebrate along the way of just like keeping that morale, if you will, just in a place of, Nicole, I love what you said of the gratitude of it, of celebrating those moments of just gratitude.
I've tried to get really good about celebrating little incremental wins with an eye to where do I want to be in a year? Where do I want to be in 2 years kind of thing. So I mapped out, all right, so here's where my income was before the separation. Here's where I would like to get to in a couple of years. And I've got monthly goals broken down, reverse engineering that. So when I got my income back to $2,000 a month in gross revenue, that was a win. When I got up to $3,000 gross a month, that was a win. When I got my first $7,000 month, that was a huge win. And I got an $8,000 a month. That was a massive win, right? So then you start looking back at, okay, so what's my 6-month rolling revenue? And I'm like, holy cow, that's twice what it was for the entire previous year. Like,
Amazing.
all kinds of wins. Yeah. So
Did you have champagne? Did you do something?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely had some friends over for Prosecco. May have also had some on my own on different occasions.
Yeah.
But so I'll just share, it's an easy number to remember. So the year before I separated was 2022. I separated 3 months into 2023. So the first 3 months of 2023 were a wash, basically, because it was all figuring out, oh, this is what I have to do. But my total annual gross revenue for 2023 was 123% more than the previous year.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That's amazing.
So, again, I started pretty low, so I'm not like a gazillionaire, but yeah, that was a pretty big win. My monthly average revenue goal for like next year, I was already making by the end of last year. So I was like, oh, that's all I had to do. It's fun. I ran into a friend one time and I hadn't seen him in maybe a year and a half because I had been so like, I turned into a hermit. I couldn't like go out and be social for a while. So we were catching up for a little bit and he was asking how my health was because he knew I had all this nervous system stuff. And I told him how well things were going since the separation. And I was like, yeah, this whole time I thought it was my chronic illness holding me back, but it was and he finished my sentence for me. He goes, your chronic husband. And I was like, yeah. Yeah, I had no idea how much growth there was going to be just from removing that piece of the equation. So lots of wins along the way and I'm not done. So
good for you. And I know we're talking finances too. And I know we're not talking abusive relationships, but this just reminded me of a clip I saw from Tori Dunlap from her first 100K talking about, I want to say it's something like 90%, she said, of abusive relationships involve some sort of financial abuse. And so
yes.
I don't know if anyone feels comfortable speaking to the financial freedom aspect of running your own business and having your own income, because I do feel like, I know people that are in relationships because they don't have a financial exit. And so there is no path out of the relationship that feels feasible to them. If they don't have community or family or anything that they can fall back on, you feel very obviously trapped in your situation of where do I go? I don't have money to go anywhere. So I don't know.
Correct.
That's
financial abuse is almost always a part of any abusive relationship. Because it's very effective, right? And abusers will do what works to control the situation. And financial abuse is very effective because if you don't know how you're going to financially provide yourself, you might die.
Yeah.
Right? So we have this built-in biological fear. Exclusion from the group means possible death, right? So there's a lot of incentive just as far as how our brains are wired to stay in a situation that is certain rather than one that is uncertain, but potentially much healthier, right? Yeah. I'll share there was financial abuse in my relationship. That was a big piece of why I stayed as long as I did. There were all kinds of financial skills I had learned from my business that I wanted to be implementing in my personal finances, and I was not able to. Because when your finances are joined, that takes both people cooperating. So, not that I was not a financially capable and responsible person before. Like when I was in college, I didn't have a credit card. I was the one who was like physically balancing my checkbook every week. I knew exactly what was coming in and out. But you lose touch with those skills when you spent 2 decades in a space where you can't really do that anymore. And you just kind of have to fly by the seat of your pants and be nervous all the time about money. Right. So that was one of the fun things for me when I was separated. And I was like, oh, I can use my spreadsheets now for my personal money. Yes. I was so excited. And people in CCA Next Level, they know how I love my spreadsheets. And that is really empowering. So I'd been doing that in my business for a while as a freelancer, and then being able to also bring that into my personal side of my money life in a way that I hadn't been able to in a very, very long time. That was really exciting and brought a lot of the stability and certainty that I wasn't sure I was going to get. So I've started saying to friends, I don't freelance because I'm independent. I'm independent because I freelance. So I'm grateful every day that I'm a freelancer and that I stumbled sideways into copywriting thanks to Nikki's Facebook ad.
Cleo and Nicole, did you have other financial kind of advice and tips for navigating that piece of it?
Well, a big part of my relationship was that again, when there's addiction involved, there's often the person who's not the addict ends up being codependent, taking care of the other person. So my situation was very much I earned 2 or 3 times what my partner earned. And so what kept me from leaving a lot of times was feeling like I didn't know if he'd be okay if I left. So that's a big thing where I don't know, my recommendation is go to Al-Anon, go to a group that can help you talk through that. If that's someone who's listening, if that's your experience right now, feeling like you need to take care of the person you're with and you can't leave them or they will be in trouble, because that shouldn't be, talking to past Nicole, that shouldn't be your responsibility. And I also had this thing in my relationship, and Dorothy, I think you and I connected over this, back when we met Next Level Live, my partner thought that marketing was evil. And so dealing with that kind of dynamic made it really hard to earn. It's not, I want to say for the record, I think if you are writing for businesses that you believe in, it absolutely is important to help them get the word out there. You don't have to write for big oil. You can choose your clients. But those are the things I dealt with. And so I think because of that, after the breakup, I did feel stronger financially. And also just again, Dorothy was saying, being able to make money choices for yourself. You're not relying on someone else's income. You're not trying to take care of someone else from an income standpoint. You can make decisions, invest in your own business, invest in yourself in ways that you couldn't before. At least that was my experience. I think in 2023, I had a lot more business expenses, choices I made. I was I'm doing this, and I'm investing in coaching, and I'm going to, and all of those investments led to an increase ultimately in gross revenue. So the freedom to make choices in money was huge for me. And yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because I do think that's the opposite side of the coin of taking care of someone and that responsibility that I think as women, I think we feel it a lot of just people pleasing and that maternal instinct to we have to take care of everyone around us. And that's a hard thing to separate that. What's your responsibility versus what is someone else's as an adult responsibility.
Yeah, there's so much guilt, because then if you end things and then things go badly for them, then that's going to be your fault. But it's not. We're talking about grown adults. It's not your effing job. It's not your job. It's not your job.
Yeah. It's a PG podcast, Dorothy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to say too, this is all applicable whether you are male, female, non-binary, whatever, heterosexual relationship, homosexual relationship, whatever type of relationship you are in, the feelings are applicable, and all of the brightness at the end of the tunnel is also applicable. I want to thank all of you guys for being on here.
Yeah.
because it is such a great testament that you can go through really, really hard things, and you can go through it in times that I think most people would think, oh my gosh, how are you going to do that? You're freelance. Whoa, you've got a toddler. Whoa, you've got children. Well, you've got your whole life.
Well, you're like trying to grasp to stability too. I feel like
Yeah,
in that
exactly.
moment, all you want is some sort of stability. And so I think,
Right.
yeah, that instinct is like, I forget who said earlier, the W-2, but yeah, that's not necessarily the case. So
Mhm, mhm.
yeah.
I think one of the things that I'm curious about, and certainly we've taken up a lot of your time, so thank you for that. Not that this is a podcast with the goal of getting people to end things with their significant others, although you know what, fine, if that's what should happen. I think maybe I'm curious is, what were some of the inklings? What were some of the kind of the thoughts in your head that made you go, maybe this should change? I feel like big life changes start with little inklings, right? Like
Yeah.
for copywriting career, right? It kind of maybe it started with the even if it started with the Facebook ad. There's the, oh, hey, maybe I want to look into this. So were there any inklings, maybe even emotions or things where you thought, maybe I have to look at this slightly differently?
So it was a different situation for me. It wasn't my decision. So that was definitely like, I felt very blindsided, which is a really different experience, I think, than like having to sort of come up with the exit strategy yourself. So yeah, it was definitely like a lot to just figure out how to recover from that. And I do think the confidence and the amount of like growth that I went through being a freelancer and having my own business, I really think set me up to be able to handle that in a way that I wouldn't have. I just think that there's so much growth in having to like take that responsibility for your own life the way you do when you're a freelancer, having to just build that confidence and that trust in yourself and in your own resilience that really helped when I was going through that situation.
Do you think it will change how you approach your next relationship, your next big relationship?
Oh, yeah. I'm just starting to dip my toes into dating, and it's definitely, I think it's interesting dating as a freelancer. I don't want to say that like I don't want to date someone who works a regular job. I almost feel like it's true. I mean, we were talking about like financial freedom earlier, but I think just like the lifestyle and the schedule freedom is so amazing. This thought will come in my head, if I like chatting with a guy or something, and I'll be like, oh, he has a regular job. Like, imagine if I could go camping and I had to like, I couldn't go camping that week because this guy's boss said I couldn't go camping that week. It's like, yeah. I go camping the week I choose to go camping. Like,
My schedule is my schedule.
Yeah. I don't want to deal with your boss saying no to my vacations.
I'm dating too. Can confirm dating other freelancers and business owners is awesome. Like the ability to just flirt during the day when you're like, I'm on break. What are you doing right now? Yeah. Lots of fun.
Two things to say. First, I want to answer Nikki's first question about like when you knew or what like the inkling it was time to go. And I think this is important to say, especially for people who are dealing with, again, abuse or addiction in their partner, is that like when I left, I had a catalog of moments in my brain where I was like, I should have left then. I should have left then. I should have left then. And I would play them. And that's what made the couple months after my breakup so hard. Like it was because I was like, oh, I should have left. I should have known. I should have known. And I waited until like something like awful happened to like actually leave. But sometimes you like, I think the message I want to end that with is you will leave when it's time. And like, there's no point in beating yourself up over not leaving earlier. There's like, if I hadn't have waited until like a line was crossed, then I might have gone back. It might have gotten worse. People might disagree, but in my opinion, there are not multiple timelines. And so you don't know what the other timeline looks like. You don't know what a different decision could be. So when you leave is when you'll leave, and it's okay if you stayed quote unquote longer than you should have. I just want to say that. And then I do also want to share on a more positive note that I am dating someone new.
Yay!
Yeah.
Exciting.
But the bad news is he works at a theater. And so like sometimes he's like on the schedule of plays opening and closing and stuff.
Yeah.
Is he
Like
interested in
sometimes he'll
copywriting?
I know. I was like, come work for me. I'll hire you. he builds sets, which is very, very cool, like very artistic and cool. But yeah, sometimes he'll have like very long like work days. When a play is about to open, it's like, can't even hang out with me. And I'm like, that's stupid.
Yeah. Tech week is the worst. Can confirm. Yeah.
I want to offer another tip because what you said made me think of it, Nicole. Journaling. And journaling throughout whatever process you're going through, but also set time, even if it's a month later, 3 months later, read back your journal entries.
Yeah.
You might then be like, oh, I've written the same thing over the course of many years.
I actually forgot when Nikki asked what were the things that started piecing things into place. I forgot I started putting together a timeline because I was trying to figure out, wait, how did this happen? So I was like, okay, here's these emails that got sent on this date. And here's this thing that I remember happening on this date. And then you start to see the threads.
Also, we're really good at ignoring patterns. We're really good at just being like, no, everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Exactly. Well, and on the other side of that coin, Cleo, you and I are similar. My last doc site was not my choice, although looking back, thank goodness he ended it. Thank goodness.
Right.
But after I made a list of reasons why, I think I named it why he sucked, but I don't know, can we say that on our
I think we can say that.
And it was helpful to go back and take a look at it, in the time we're thinking, oh, but there was that one time we had fun. Like, let's go back and look at the list. Let's just take a look at the list.
This reminds me of my list of like why I hate and love New York City. The list of like toxic things about the city is very, very long. And I'm like, but I still love it. No.
No.
The reasons I love them, like there's not even a reason. There's just this ambivalent feeling. Like this is so similar to relationships. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Really, really.
All of the cons, but no.
If I could just add a parting thought, consider the butterfly. So if you're in a situation that feels very messy and confusing and you feel like you don't know how you're going to get out of it and you don't know what's going to be on the other side and it's all very scary and you feel like a useless bucket of goo, before they can transition from pupa to actual butterfly, they dissolve themselves. That's not pretty. And yet on the other side of it, then they turn into what they're really meant to be.
Love that.
Not that I would like push anyone out of a relationship, but I think that we have this really negative view of being single in our culture.
Well, and divorce too, to add to that. Yeah.
Single, divorce, especially as a parent. I mean, I mentioned the whole idea that like, oh, the single mom is so exhausting. It's freaking easier. Like, it's just, I think we have this really negative view, and that I know I definitely felt like that I had to save my marriage no matter what, because if I was single, I don't even know what, the world would end. And it's like actually really great. You could have a perfectly good life and be very happy. And if you want to have your own business too, like it's so much fun to do all of that. I'm like 2 years single at this point, and I still feel like I'm just having a blast being like, I can do anything. I painted all my furniture bright colors and no one could stop me. And like, I painted my oven. Like, you can do whatever you want.
No, you could paint an oven.
Is that safe? Okay, to be clear, not anything you want. Wait a minute here.
You can rob a bank.
Cleo, what color is your oven? What color is your oven?
I made it blue, and then I used like tissue paper and Mod Podge on like the drawer that's under the oven because it doesn't get hot, and made it all like multicolored, like mosaic. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Wow.
I didn't have to ask anyone's permission.
Exactly.
So I think that to someone who's maybe considering or worried about that, like being single is so much better than our society will tell you.
Yeah. And my final point, I just want to remind everyone something we talked about, I think at the top of the podcast, but your professional community can be really, really like awesome and supportive. And I know like Cleo and Dorothy, because we're all in Next Level, right? Like the three of us have been talking about our breakups for a while. I like connecting with the two of them has been amazing and so important. And we met in a professional setting, but it's like when we realized that we're all going through the same thing, we just like started chatting and came closer to each other. And it's been, I love you guys. It's been such an important part of my healing in life. So thank you.
Me too. Being in a room with everybody here together, it's like coming home because we've spent so much quality time together. It's like, these are my people.
Aw.
Let's get all mushy.
Beautiful.
I was like literally going to warn Nikki. I was like, I'd cry on this one. I don't know.
Yeah. Fantastic. And being part of this space that lets people show up as who they actually are. So many lives are just, they're what they're supposed to be now because this community exists. So love.
Wow, thanks for saying that.
Aw.
Thank you. But truly, that means means a lot. Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for being willing to come on to tell your stories. I know that this is a lot to share and some very emotional stuff, but also I want to make sure that we end by celebrating you and the fact that you made the tough choices, you went through the hard times, and you got out on the other side. You were already spectacular, but even better and stronger and
To say you're badasses,
more
but, like,
successful. Yes, exactly. Than you were before. We definitely can't say
Bad- I don't
badasses
think-
on
I
this
don't think we
podcast.
can.
No, we're definitely gonna have to beep that out. Yeah, but you are worth the beep.
The bleep.
Worth the beep. With that, just a reminder to everybody to take care of yourselves.
Yes.
Make the hard choices. Give yourself a little bit of grace. Make sure you're getting everything that you should be getting. And we will catch you all in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.